Have you ever felt just, well, completely overwhelmed by information? Wishing there was a shortcut to really get a complex topic without drowning in all the details. Or maybe you've looked at the pyramids, the pharaohs, and wondered, what was everyday life really like for ancient Egyptians,
Mhm.
beyond the huge monuments and the gold masks? Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, dig into them, and pull out the most important bits of knowledge. We help you cut through the noise. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating world, ancient Egyptian magical texts. Our sources for this deep dive are excerpts from a pretty groundbreaking collection, Ancient Egyptian Magical Texts.pdf. What's really exciting here is that some of these documents, well, they're being translated and looked at properly for the first time, giving us fresh eyes on things. And these aren't the big formal pronouncements you might think of, royal decrees or temple hymns. No, these are the spells, the incantations that were sort of woven right into daily life for ordinary people. So our mission today, it's to uncover how magic was actually used by regular ancient Egyptians. What problems did they try to solve with it? We'll explore the blend of myth, ritual, and honestly, some very practical applications. We'll look at the specific words, the sometimes strange ingredients, and the powerful beliefs that really shaped their world. This deep dive, it's your shortcut to understanding a deeply spiritual but also incredibly practical
Yeah.
side of ancient Egyptian culture. It offers those aha moments, shedding light on their fears, their hopes, and it might even make you think a bit differently about how we today look for control and meaning in our own lives. So let's dig in.
It really is remarkable how these texts shift the perspective, isn't it? When we think of Egyptian magic, the image that usually comes to mind is, well, grand rituals, pharaohs, maybe priests in big temples. You picture scenes on temple walls, or maybe those complex spells for the afterlife, the Book of the Dead, that kind of thing. But what's so fascinating here in these sources is the clear distinction they make. This collection, it says it largely excludes protective texts from non-private sources like rituals and temples.
Yeah.
Instead, it focuses right in on what the text calls everyday magic.
Everyday magic. So this isn't just for the pharaoh or the high priests, it's magic for, well, everyone else. That feels like a pretty big shift in understanding.
Exactly. It suggests magic was much more widespread, much more accessible than maybe we previously thought.
Right. Not just some elite practice, but common. A tool people actually used day to day. And it's not just a handful of texts suggesting this, is it? The source says these are fairly representative of the larger collection.
Precisely. That's a key point. It underscores just how ingrained this was. It's magic woven right into the fabric of daily life. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it tells us magic was an integral part of life for, well, potentially everyone. Think about a farmer dealing with a scorpion sting, a very real, very dangerous threat back then. Or a mother trying to protect her child from illness, or maybe what they saw as unseen forces. This wasn't some hidden arcane knowledge just for the intellectuals or the religious elite. It seems to have been a fundamental practical tool, a way to interact with a world they saw as full of unseen powers, both good and bad. It really makes you rethink the lines between religion and magic in their context. They often look inseparable.
That deep integration is fascinating, but how did people actually, get these spells? Were they just passed down word of mouth or were they more tangible? You said they weren't just spoken words lost to the wind.
That's a really important distinction. They weren't just ephemeral. These spells had a very physical presence. The sources tell us they were primarily recorded on papyri, ostraca, and stelae.
Okay, let's break that down. Papyri are like ancient paper scrolls, right? Made from the plant.
Exactly. And ostraca are basically broken pieces of pottery or flakes of stone, kind of like ancient scratch pads, used for quick notes, drafts, maybe less formal things.
And stelae, those are the upright stone slabs.
Correct, often carved with inscriptions, sometimes images. And beyond those general categories, the sources mention specific, really interesting objects like Cippi of Horus and larger healing statues.
Cippi of Horus. What exactly were those? That sounds very specific.
A Cippus, the CIPQS, was usually a small, sort of stela-shaped object. Often they show the child god Horus trampling crocodiles and gripping snakes or scorpions, other dangerous animals. They were powerful protective devices, basically. Apotropaic meant to ward off evil, specifically venomous creatures and other dangers.
Wow, okay. And healing statues.
Similar idea, but often larger, maybe depicting a god or goddess known for healing. They'd be covered in these protective spells, and the practice was often to pour water over the statue. The belief was the water would absorb the magical power of the spells inscribed on it. Then you could collect this, well, magical water and use it for healing, maybe drink it or apply it to a wound or an afflicted area.
So the object itself, the medium, becomes part of the magical process. Not just decorative, but active magical tools. And the sources mention that for many texts, they could actually be rolled up and worn about the neck as amulets. Just imagine that wearing your protection literally wrapped around your neck.
It's a very direct, very personal kind of protection, isn't it? That physical closeness of the smell as an amulet would give a constant, tangible sense of security.
Against all those perceived threats of daily life.
Exactly. And it wasn't always just personal wear. Those larger items, the stelae, the statues we mentioned, they were often set up in particular places.
This points towards a kind of spatial magic, protecting a whole area, a house, maybe a workshop, a field. Right, so the texts, whether worn or installed somewhere, were explicitly meant to afford protection to the owner or the user. It's active defense, not just wishful thinking.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about their ingenuity and their practical approach to dealing with perceived dangers.
And the context where these spells were found tells us something too, right? They weren't just off on their own, separate from other knowledge.
Not at all. That's another crucial piece. They were found in what the source calls magical reference books. So collections of spells, but also, significantly, alongside hymnical, belletristic, and especially with medical texts.
Medical texts. So magic and medicine weren't separate things for them.
It seems not, or at least the boundary was very blurry. Finding magical spells mixed in with medical treatments or hymns or even literature. It shows an incredibly integrated worldview. For them, it wasn't necessarily separate categories like religion, magic, medicine. It was all part of a holistic system for understanding and interacting with the world. A diagnosis might include, say, a herbal remedy and a spell, because the illness itself might be seen as having a supernatural cause, maybe a demon, or some imbalance that needed spiritual intervention too.
Physical and spiritual treatment, hand in hand.
Exactly. No sharp division. Mind, body, spirit, magic, medicine, all interconnected.
Okay, so that integrated view is key. But how did they think these spells actually worked? It wasn't just saying the words you said. What was the engine driving the magic?
Right, the core mechanism. This is where the sources bring up the linking mechanism, and they stress it is of prime importance to make the spell work. This isn't just, chanting and hoping. It's described as a sophisticated system. Essentially, it's a form of sympathetic magic. The magician creates a link, a powerful connection between the problem they're facing right now in the real world and a powerful event from mythology, usually involving the gods.
So connecting the present problem to a mythical solution.
Precisely. This connection could be a full parallelism where the spell explicitly mirrors the mythical story step by step. Or sometimes it's more subtle, just an illusion only.
Huh.
And this whole process, this linking, operates in the mythical sphere created by the magician. They're essentially trying to bring the power of that mythical past into the present moment.
And the sources say the consequences could be far-reaching if that link, that intended parallelism, was broken. If there was reluctance or refusal, that sounds serious.
It does. It implies that the ritual's integrity, the magician's focus, and the precise wording were absolutely crucial. If that link broke, the spell wouldn't just fizzle out. It could potentially backfire, maybe leave the person even more vulnerable. It suggests you had to really know what you were doing.
So attention to detail was paramount. Can you give an example of this linking?
Sure. The text mentions example no 30. In that spell, the word WNW.tia, which means moment or instant, is used. But that word also sounds like and perhaps deliberately invokes DOGDU, who might be a primordial deity or concept linked to time itself. So just using that specific word pulls in a whole layer of mythical association. That's an illusion.
Ah, okay. Subtle but powerful.
Exactly. Or consider no, 87, which mentions Tion Logis Membrorum. Now that's actually a Latin term used by the editor, meaning catalog of limbs. It refers to Egyptian spells that meticulously list body parts, the head, the arms, the legs, etc., and often associate each part with a specific god or a protective mythical event.
Like creating a divine shield piece by piece.
Kind of, yes. By naming each limb and invoking its divine protector or mythical precedent, the idea was to safeguard or heal the entire body through this detailed parallelism.
In spell 91, it says the sufferer is systematically implicated in the mythical healing. What does that mean?
It means the person seeking help isn't just passive, they become part of the story. Their suffering is explicitly identified with the suffering of a god in the myth, usually Horus being healed by Isis. So the healing process described in the myth is meant to directly transfer to the person. They become Horus in that ritual moment.
Wow, so myth wasn't just history to them, it was alive, repeatable,
That seems to be the core belief. The mythical past wasn't just back then, it was a living blueprint, a source of power that could be accessed and reenacted in the present to change reality. It's a very different understanding of time and cause and effect than our modern linear view.
And adding to that power, some spells didn't just rely on human skill, they claimed divine origin, right? Straight from the gods.
Yes. The sources note that sometimes a divine origin is claimed for spells, as in the case of Nose, 53 and 84.
Imagine the authority that would give a spell, if people believed it came directly from Isis or Thoth.
Absolutely. It would lend it immense credibility and perceived power. It elevates it beyond human cleverness into the realm of cosmic truth. And what's also really interesting is their attitude towards magic from outside Egypt. The text says, magic from adjoining countries, especially Nubia and Libya, was held in great esteem by the Egyptians.
So they weren't closed off, they actually valued foreign magic.
It seems so. They actively sought it out, incorporated it. The source even mentions that spells in other languages are attested.
Spells in foreign languages, that's remarkable.
It really is. It suggests a surprising openness, a willingness to draw on diverse sources of power and knowledge wherever they came from. A very pragmatic approach, you could say. If it worked or was believed to work, they'd use it. It paints a picture of a very dynamic magical landscape.
Okay, so we have the mythical links, the divine authority. But it wasn't just about the words or the origins. You mentioned earlier the action was crucial.
Yes, absolutely critical. The sources state unequivocally, no spell can be detached from an accompanying magical action.
You couldn't just recite it from an armchair.
No, you had to do something. And beyond the main action, certain preliminary conditions pertain too, things you might need to do beforehand. And how do you know what to do? Well, this practical information may be gained from the spell itself, usually towards the end, in the directions for use. These sections often give explicit hints on the use of the paraphernalia, the objects, the ingredients involved.
Like a recipe or an instruction manual built into the spell.
Exactly. It's a complete package. The words, the myth, the ingredients, the actions, the conditions. It raises that important question. What does this tell us about their holistic view? Mind, body, ritual, words all working together. It was a meticulously choreographed performance aimed at a specific result.
So let's talk about those results. What were they trying to achieve? What kinds of problems did this everyday magic address? It seems like it covered a huge range.
An incredibly wide range, from, as the source says, common diseases and vague illnesses, just feeling unwell, to things affecting several parts of the body, which we see in spells 50 through 57. Even specific conditions like blindness in spell 58.
So physical ailments were a major focus.
Definitely. But it wasn't just physical. They also dealt with what we might call internal or psychological disturbances. Spell 59 mentions demon possession.
Which would have been perceived as a very real external entity causing inner turmoil, right?
Precisely. And spell 8 is fascinating. It's a spell against nightmare in his own place. This shows a remarkable awareness of and concern for mental and emotional well-being. Bad dreams, anxieties manifesting at night, these were also things magic could address.
It really is a holistic view, covering mind and body.
It truly is. And it extended to very specialized areas of care. The sources point out women's ailments, especially those connected with childbearing, in spells 60 and 61.
Childbirth must have been incredibly dangerous then. It makes sense they'd focus magic on it.
Absolutely. And following from that, a deep concern for infants and children. There's a whole section, spells 65 through 70, dedicated to protective spells for children, protecting the most vulnerable members of society.
And you mentioned earlier, this wasn't separate from other healing methods.
No, and that's crucial. Spells 71 through 81 are specifically described as spells accompanying the administration of medicines.
So you'd take your potion or apply your poultice and recite the spell.
Exactly. It suggests they saw these as complementary approaches. The physical remedy dealt with the physical symptoms, perhaps, while the magic addressed the underlying spiritual cause or helped ensure the remedy worked effectively. Two sides of the same healing coin.
Can we look at some more specific examples? The sources list quite a few. Spell 23 and 24 are against a samana demon. What might that have been?
It's hard to know precisely, but based on context within healing texts, samana likely referred to a type of demon associated with causing things like fever, inflammation, maybe certain kinds of painful attacks. They had specific names for the forces they believed caused specific problems.
And then there's something incredibly practical, almost mundane, spell 28 for getting rid of a fishbone.
Yes. It sounds minor, but imagine how agonizing and potentially dangerous that could be. The spell involves swallowing a cake with a special mixture. It's practical, yes, but imbued with magical intent. Maybe the magic was thought to persuade or soften the bone, or perhaps protect the throat. It shows magic tackling even tiny everyday annoyances.
A magical Heimlich maneuver, almost.
In a way. Other practical examples include spells for warding off a hemorrhage in 30 and 32, dealing with a burn in 34, or a simple headache spell in 37.
Things we still deal with all the time.
Exactly. And then there are spells addressing wider crises, like spell 20 for purifying anything during the plague, an attempt to magically combat contagion, this terrifying invisible threat.
And internal troubles, too, like spell 26 for dispelling the Aku demon in the belly. What was an Aku demon?
Occur often refers to spirits of the dead, particularly potentially restless or malevolent ones. So an Ocu demon in the belly would likely be their explanation for stomach pains, indigestion, internal discomfort, attributing it to an invasive spirit that needed to be driven out magically. It all reinforces just how practical and integrated this magic was, touching every part of life and health.
But their worries weren't just internal, were they? They used magic to battle threats from the world around them. Nature itself could be deadly.
Oh, absolutely. Spells 82 and 83 are generally for the ordinary peasant against various dangerous animals. Life, especially for those working the land near the Nile, was filled with potentially lethal encounters.
And the sources highlight some specific culprits. Scorpions seem to have been a huge concern.
Huge. Spells 84 through 123 are all against scorpions. The text notes this is the largest collection of charms in the source. Scorpion stings were common, painful, and could easily be fatal, especially for children, so it's no surprise they poured so much magical effort into protection.
And crocodiles, another Nile hazard.
Yes, spells 124 to 135 deal with crocodiles, and then snakes in spells 136 to 143. These weren't just annoyances, they were constant deadly threats in their environment. Magic was, in a very real sense, a survival tool against the natural world.
It paints a picture of a world teeming with danger, but it went beyond just animals, didn't it? They used magic against cosmic threats, too.
They did. The ultimate adversary in that sense was Apap, the demon of chaos, mentioned in spells 144 to 146. Apap, often depicted as a colossal serpent, was the embodiment of cosmic disorder. He wasn't just a dangerous animal, he was a force that threatened to swallow the sun god Rees each night and plunge the universe into darkness. The source describes Apap as the chief of all these dangerous creatures.
So battling Apap was like battling the end of the world.
In a sense, yes. And interestingly, the source notes that dealing with Apap properly belonged to the sphere of the king as the maintainer on earth of the order of nature. The king had a cosmic duty to uphold Ma'at, divine order, against chaos. But these spells suggest that ordinary people could also participate in that cosmic struggle on a personal level through magic. It connects the microcosm of their lives to the macrocosm of the universe. Their magic helped maintain order, just like the king's rituals.
So they were protecting themselves and, in a way, the whole world order. What about threats from other people or less natural enemies?
Yes, magic covered that too. The sources mention execration rites. These were basically curses, often involving destroying figurines or texts bearing the names of enemies, human enemies, foreign armies, perceived rebels. A depot of such items was found near Mergissa Fortress.
Symbolic destruction.
Exactly. And there were also spells for general protection against human and supernatural foes. Spell 9, for instance, mentions warding off male dead, male enemy, male opponent.
So protection from ghosts or harmful spirits, too.
Yes. The male dead, female dead likely refers to potentially harmful spirits of the deceased. They believed the dead could interfere negatively in the world of living, if not properly appeased or magically bound. And spells like number 11 specifically protect the house from conjured threats, maybe magical attacks sent by enemies. It's a comprehensive shield against almost any conceivable danger, physical, natural, supernatural, human, cosmic.
Okay, let's unpack the magical toolbox itself, the ingredients. Forget Eye of Newt. Some of the things listed in these spells are really wild.
They really are. And what's fascinating, as the source suggests, is that however strange they sound to us now, each ingredient likely held some specific symbolic meaning or perceived power within their belief system. It wasn't just random throwing things together.
Right. Take spell 9 for fumigating against enemies or the dead. The list is memorable. Feces of a lion, feces of a dog, feces of a sow, feces of a boar, feces of a Mr. Animal, feces of a goose, feces of a donkey, of a snake, fat of a donkey.
It's quite the list. The Mr. Animal isn't clearly identified, maybe a type of antelope or gazelle. But the sheer amount of, well, dung from various animals is striking.
What was the thinking there? Just maximum offense.
Possibly. Using something inherently repulsive or unclean to drive away equally unwanted forces, spirits, enemies, or perhaps certain animals were seen as powerful, and even their waste carried a protective or aggressive quality. The lion feces, for instance.
And spell 58, for dispelling darkness or maybe blindness, uses gallbladder of a tortoise pulverized with honey. Again, very specific.
Very. Maybe the tortoise, being long-lived or associated with the earth, had some symbolic connection, or perhaps the bitterness of the gall was thought to counteract the darkness. We can't always know the exact logic, but we can be sure there was a logic to them. It's like this carefully constructed, if alien to us, pharmacopoeia of power.
I can only imagine the smell of that fumigation in spell 9. A potent repellent indeed. But it wasn't all challenging ingredients, lots of plants too.
Yes, many plant-based and other natural components. Spell 8 uses fresh herbs soaked in beer and myrrh for nightmares. Sounds almost soothing, actually. Spell 24 uses cucumber seed, ground and heated with wine. Spell 56 uses fresh moringa oil, which we know has beneficial properties.
So some things sound more like traditional remedies.
They do, but often with a twist. Spell 61 combines milk of a woman who has given birth to a male child with strong-smelling gummy. The milk implies transferring the protective power of a successful birth, perhaps. Spell 72 has a cooked mixture of resin from an acacia, dough of barley, care beans, colocynths, feces, a real mix. And even textiles had power. Spell 31 uses threads of the border of an Aes fabric with a knot made in it for bleeding. Aes was a type of linen.
The knot itself being magical too, presumably?
Very likely. Knots were often used in magic for binding or sealing, and familiar things appear too. Bunches of fresh plants in 18, or garlic in 121, which has a long cross-cultural history of warding off evil.
And they didn't stop at organic materials, minerals, symbolic objects were also key.
Yes. Spell 30 uses a bead of carnelian for hemorrhage. Carnelian is a red stone. The link to blood and vitality seems clear. For protecting a child, spell 68 gets quite elaborate. Pellets of gold, balls of garnet, and importantly, a seal with a crocodile in a hand. Precious materials combined with potent symbols of danger subdued, crocodile, and action, hand.
That sounds like a powerful amulet.
Indeed. And sometimes simpler materials held symbolic weight, like clay of Isis in spell 130, or a clay egg in 126 invoking the goddess of magic and life, or symbols of creation. Even pigments like yellow ochre in 49, or materials like vulture plumes in 17, or flax in 22. Everything could potentially be imbued with magical significance and used purposefully. It's this incredible fusion of the mundane and the mystical, all part of a carefully designed system.
So they gathered these specific, meaningful ingredients, but then it was all about how they used them, right? The ritual actions were just as precise.
Absolutely. The directions for use section of the spells makes it clear the magic was a precise science to them, not haphazard at all. Simple preparation like grinding things down, making them into a paste or mass, like in spells 9 and 24, was often the first step, transforming the raw stuff into a usable magical compound.
And then the application, it seems incredibly specific about where things need to go.
Extremely specific. You don't just rub it anywhere. Spell 9 says, fumigate a man over it 4 times. Spell 8 has a mixture rubbed with it on the face. Spell 14 says, apply to a man's throat. Spell 30, to the behind of a woman or a man. Spell 58, to the exterior of the eyes. Spell 26 and 52, directly on the sore spot. Spell 26 also mentions on the belly.
So targeting the exact location of the problem.
Often, yes, or symbolic locations. Spell 40, to a man's head. Spell 42, strangely, to the left foot. Spell 31, for a woman's issue, to the inside of her vagina. Spell 69 for child protection, to the child's throat.
And sometimes you ingested it, like the fishbone spell.
Right, spell 28 says the mixture is to be swallowed by a man. Or the ingredients could be incorporated into an object to be made into an amulet, like in spell 68, for ongoing protection. The specific action, the specific location was all believed to be critical for directing the magical energy correctly, ensuring the spell hit its target.
It wasn't just applying substances either. There were symbolic gestures too.
Yes, actions that carried inherent magical weight. Spell 33 mentions tying 2 knots in fabric again, that idea of binding or restricting. Spell 37 is a fascinating instruction for a headache. Put your arms on your head, maybe mimicking the pain or a posture of surrender that the spell then resolves.
Or drawing power to the head. Hard to say.
Exactly. And spell 129 directly invokes myth through action. Isis striking with her wing to close a crocodile's mouth. The magician might mimic this gesture, embodying the goddess. It adds a performative layer, connecting the human action directly to divine power.
And repetition seems important too. Lots of spells mentioned being said 4 times.
Yes, that number comes up Frequently spells 9, 22, 52, 61, 127, 128, 143, 144, among others. 4 was a symbolically complete number for Egyptians, often linked to the cardinal directions, stability, totality. Repeating the spell 4 times likely reinforced the intention, built up the magical energy, or aligned the ritual with cosmic completeness. It shows just how meticulously they considered every element to maximize a chance of success.
Now, this is where it gets, for me, incredibly interesting. The relationship with the gods in these spells. It wasn't just passive prayer, was it? They seemed to actively engage with the gods, sometimes, well, quite forcefully.
It's one of the most striking aspects. The way they leverage the divine hierarchy is remarkable. The magician isn't just a humble supplicant. They're often positioned as a negotiator, someone engaging in a kind of cosmic transaction. Isis, for instance, is absolutely central, especially in healing. Spell 90 has that powerful declaration from her. I am Isis, the goddess, the mistress of magic, who practices magic. In Hezgul, whose words are useful, whose speaking is effective. All biting snakes listen to me.
She owns her power there.
Completely. And she's constantly portrayed healing her son Horus, making her the go-to divine healer. Her power is directly invoked time and again.
And Horus, her son, often the one being healed in the myths, especially from scorpion stings or poison, he becomes a stand-in for the person needing help.
Exactly. He's the archetype of the protected and the healed. The spell often implies, just as Horus was saved, so too will this person be saved. His protection is even linked cosmically to the bark of Re in spell 90, connecting his safety to the sun god's journey.
Speaking of Re, the sun god, he seems to represent ultimate authority.
Yes, Re is frequently called upon for salvation for repelling enemies, like in spells 40 and 95. He's the source of light, the one whose command brings the vital Nile flood. He's the pinnacle of cosmic power that the magician wants to tap into.
But then there's Osiris, god of the underworld, resurrection, and the target of some surprisingly aggressive tactics.
This is perhaps the most shocking part for modern sensibilities. The level of coercion directed at Osiris in some texts is astounding.
Like spell 1, which says, if they fail to make her come after me, I will set fire to Busiris and burn up Osiris, threatening to burn down his sacred city and him with it.
It's incredibly bold. Or spells 6 and 53, threatening to annihilate his corpse and root out his soul aspect. This isn't polite asking, it's a magical ultimatum.
What does that tell us about their view of the gods? That even gods had weaknesses or could be pressured by powerful magic?
It certainly suggests a very dynamic, even confrontational relationship was possible. That human need, channeled through potent magic, could potentially override even divine will or compel divine action. It implies that gods weren't totally remote or omnipotent, but part of a system where power could be negotiated, even demanded.
It's a very different picture than just passive worship.
Very different. And other gods play key roles too. Seth, the god of chaos, storms, the adversary of Horus. His destructive power is sometimes invoked. Spell 23 mentions his raging. Or the mythical fight between Horus and Seth is referenced, spells 32, 1 and 12, as a framework for dispelling evil, using that cosmic conflict to resolve earthly problems, harnessing even the negative forces.
And Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing.
Thoth often appears as the calm, knowledgeable one, the scribe of righteousness, spell 50. He's the one who knows the right words, the right formulas. He often intervenes in the myths to bring about resolution or healing, like in spell 90, the voice of reason and magical precision.
And finally, the Ennead, the whole council of gods.
Yes, the Ennead, the main group of 9 deities, are sometimes used more generally for the whole pantheon, are frequently mentioned, often as followers of Re or as a collective force that needs to be informed, invoked, or perhaps witness the magical act, spells 6, 27, 40, 50. It shows the magician activating the entire divine network for their purpose.
So they weren't just invoking gods, they were using the gods' stories, the myths, as the actual templates for the spells. Like, if it worked for the gods, it'll work for me.
Precisely. The mythological narratives weren't just background stories. They were the active blueprints for magical efficacy. They believed these foundational events could be reactivated.
This raises that fascinating question about their view of time again, doesn't it? The past wasn't past, it was a resource.
Exactly. A living, repeatable force. Take the famous myth of Re's and the serpent, detailed in spell 84. Isis, wanting to know Re's secret name, and thus gain power, crafts a magical serpent from his own spittle and earth. She places it in his path, it bites him, and he's overcome with agony. She then uses this leverage to force him to reveal his true name, which allows her to heal him and gain power over poison.
And this whole dramatic story becomes the basis for healing spells.
Yes. That divine struggle, Re's suffering, Isis's cunning and magical cure, it becomes the ultimate precedent for dealing with poison. The spell reenacts elements of it to achieve the same result for a human victim.
And the description of Rhee's suffering in spell 84 is so vivid. Colder than water and hotter than fire, body covered with sweat, trembling, eyes not stable. They really paint a picture.
They do. It makes the mythical event feel immediate. The idea is, if Isis could master that divine agony with her magic, then a human using a spell based on her actions could conquer a similar affliction here and now. It's cosmic-level sympathetic magic.
And the most common template seems to be Isis healing Horus.
That's arguably the most frequent healing archetype used. So many spells draw on narratives where Isis finds Horus suffering, often from a scorpion sting, but sometimes other ailments, and uses her magic to restore him. Spell 90 puts it plainly. May the child live and the poison die. Then Horus will be healed for his mother Isis, then the sufferer will be healed in the same manner.
The human sufferer becomes Horus, metaphysically.
In that ritual context, yes.
Yeah.
And the person performing the spell takes on the role of Isis. Spell 94 reinforces this. Protection of Horus are the lamentations of his mother and the cries of his brothers. The human reenactment draws power from the divine original.
And woven through all of this is the power of names. Spell 24 and 84 state, a man lives when one recites in his name. And Isis gains power over Re by learning his true name. Why was knowing the name so critical?
This concept is absolutely fundamental. For the Egyptians, a name wasn't just a label. It was intrinsically linked to the essence, the very being of a person, a god, or even a force or object. To know the true hidden name of something was to understand its nature and therefore to gain a measure of control over it. Think of creation myths where gods bring things into existence simply by speaking their names.
So naming equals power.
In a very real sense, yes. When a spell names a demon or a disease, often describing its origins or characteristics, it's not just identifying it, it's defining it, limiting it, asserting power over it, stripping it of its mystery, and thus its potency. It mirrors Isis forcing Re's name out of him to master the poison. Language itself, used correctly within these mythical frameworks, was a primary tool for shaping reality.
Okay, stepping back, what does this all tell us? Taking it all together, it's clearly not just a collection of weird old superstitions.
Not at all. It reveals a profoundly integrated worldview. Magic wasn't some fringe activity. It seems to have been a central, logical component of how they understood and interacted with the universe.
A universe where things didn't happen randomly.
Exactly. Illness, misfortune, dangerous animals, storms. These weren't seen as random chance. They had causes, often attributed to specific divine or demonic forces, or disruptions in the cosmic order, Madat. Magic provided a tangible means to identify those causes and, crucially, to do something about them. To restore balance, to heal, to protect. Gave individuals real agency in a world that could often feel chaotic and dangerous.
So religion, medicine, magic, all wrapped up together?
Inseparably, it seems. It was a comprehensive system for navigating life, addressing everything from a fishbone in the throat to the potential end of the cosmos. A truly holistic approach.
And if you look past the feces and the threats to Osiris, there's something deeply human and relatable here, isn't there?
Absolutely. Strip away the specific cultural context, and you find these universal human desires. The longing for protection and healing, for safety from harm, for health and well-being that's timeless.
And the need for control over the unseen.
Yes, that constant human quest to understand and influence the forces that seem beyond our direct grasp. Whether we call them demons or illness or economic uncertainty or random chance, we still strive to find patterns, explanations, and ways to feel like we have some control, some influence over our fate. These spells are an ancient manifestation of that deep drive.
And the importance of stories, of narrative.
Definitely. The power of belief and narrative. How we use stories, shared beliefs, rituals to create meaning, to cope with suffering, to make sense of the world, and to feel connected to something larger than ourselves. These magical texts are powerful narratives designed to produce real-world effects through belief and ritual action.
It really makes you think, how different are we really? Our tools are different: science, technology, modern medicine, but those fundamental needs.
They remain remarkably constant, don't they? That raises the interesting question. How do these ancient texts resonate today? We might not be chanting spells against APAP, but we still grapple with chaos, seek security, search for meaning, and tell ourselves stories to navigate life. The forms evolve, but the core human impulses seem to endure.
So the real aha moment here isn't just learning about ancient spells. It's seeing this magic not as primitive, but as a complex, sophisticated system. A system deeply tied to their understanding of the cosmos, their gods, and their everyday struggles.
Precisely. It gives us a vivid window into their minds, their fears, yes, but also their incredible ingenuity, their resourcefulness, and their unwavering belief in the power of words, rituals, and myth to actively shape their reality.
What a journey. We've really dug into the intricate world of everyday ancient Egyptian magic. We've seen how it functioned as a practical shield against illness, dangerous animals, even cosmic chaos.
We've explored the often surprising ingredients, the very precise ritual actions, and crucially, the powerful myths that gave these spells their meaning and perceived effectiveness.
It's a powerful reminder of how integrated their worldview was, how spirituality and practicality were two sides of the same coin.
It certainly paints a picture of a society deeply engaged with the unseen world, using every tool they conceived of to navigate it successfully.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. The ancient Egyptians clearly believed that knowing and speaking the true name of a god or a force gave them power over it, power to shape their world. So, consider this. What hidden names, what underlying truths, what fundamental principles or patterns are we in our modern world still searching for? What are we trying to name and understand to gain a sense of control or meaning or influence over our own lives and the universe around us?
That's a great question to ponder. We encourage you to reflect on how these ancient practices, however distant they seem, echo our own enduring human desires for order, for healing, for agency. The quest for knowledge, whether it's through deciphering ancient texts or through modern scientific discovery, is really a timeless human endeavor, isn't it? Still driving us forward.